Note to self, don't sit anywhere near Donald Trump at parties. We're going to discuss how to talk about the latest shooting attempt at the White House Correspondents Dinner. So pour drink, playlisters, because we're bringing you into our group chat about politics and the next generation of leaders in this country. This is Political Playlists Happy Hour.
Welcome to Political Playlists.
All right, are we ready, guys?
Happy Hour.
Happy hour.
We fucked that up so bad.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Political Playlist Happy Hour. I'm Michael Kristoff.
I'm Anna Muskie-Goldman.
And I'm Anthony Barquette.
Oh, you just snapped into consciousness there, Anthony.
Yeah. Is that post-surgery medication or what? What are we working with here?
I think it's kicking in, to be honest.
Mhm.
That was like watching a robot turn on. It was like nothing, and then
Playlisters, we have news. Anthony has now actually been replaced with AI. So there's a few glitches we're still working through, but
I will say, I told my parents, I was like, I cannot wait to get off this medication. It's not,
yeah.
On a positive side, like, this is something I do not want to be addicted to.
Interesting.
that's always good to know.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not interested in taking any more of what after they prescribed. So
Yeah, and of course you're talking about Tylenol, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Baby aspirin.
Yeah.
Well, we are glad to have you back. We are glad that your back is functioning.
That your back is back.
Your back is back. On today's happy hour, gang, I thought we really should discuss how to talk about what is the fourth assassination attempt of the president in a matter of 2 years. And, you know, obviously everybody, I think, has heard that there was a shooting attempt at the White House Correspondents Dinner over the weekend. And really what I wanted to dive into here is what is really a troubling, kind of crazy groundswell of conspiracy theories surrounding this and the previous assassination attempts on social media. I think it's escalating at a alarming rate that we've never really seen before. I mean, prior to jumping on this recording, we were talking about, like, has anyone been alive for a previous presidential assassination attempt? Like, I'm an 80s baby, and I think the Reagan thing at this very same ballroom happened well before I was born.
Right.
So, you know, I think what we're seeing here is pretty wild, and I want to really dive into all of it. You know, I think before we do that, it's really important to say that, like, we had friends who were in that ballroom over the weekend. I'm thinking of people like Alex Michelson and others. And, you know, it was a pretty terrifying, handful of minutes. And obviously they were in a pretty dangerous situation. So, you know, I think I want to just acknowledge
We're not endorsing the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't like a conspiracy pod here.
Although it could be, you
hey,
never
listen,
know.
I mean, let's see where the conversation goes.
Anthony's on painkillers, so
Yeah.
I'm down the rabbit hole. Let me just tell you that. So.
Yeah. I also think it's important to note too. I mean, law enforcement did a pretty tremendous job here from the standpoint of, like, neutralizing this threat as soon as it was presented. And
yeah, but also not a great job of securing the facility.
well, so that, I mean,
first.
So why don't I let's start with the core facts here, okay?
yeah, because that. Well, I was just okay. Okay.
You can say
Core
something.
facts.
Say something about the Secret Service if you want to before I jump into it.
Well, I was just going to say that this was the system working. Like, this is, you know, I think there's a lot being made about how did this guy get in there with guns and so close. And, you know, this is like, and it sounds like you have a very different point of view on this, and I'm interested to hear it. But my understanding is that this was, yes, as wild and crazy as this was actually like the barrier and the net of protection working quite well, because at the end of the day, this guy didn't actually really get near the president.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
the
This is
shooter
part of the
in-
conspiracy theories, though, that are
Yeah,
The
but let's
shooter
hear it. So
in
Anthony, talk
Butler-
about
Yeah.
Let's let Anthony do it.
So a 31-year-old man by the name of Cole Thomas Allen,
Mhm.
you know,
I'm sorry,
checked
hold
it.
on. Why do all these fucking people have 3 names?
three.
It's
Yeah, I
Hey,
don't know
don't
if
knock
that's just-
people with 3
it's
names.
weird. It's well,
Well, I don't know
yours
if that's
is a
just the
hyphen.
media, the
Yeah.
media giving the full name, like if they would give
Yeah.
my full name, but he checked into the Hilton the day before the event. And on April 25th, he was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and knives. And he tried to breach the security during the White House Correspondents Dinner. He, was able to pass a checkpoint near the entrance, and shots were fired. He ended up being tackled and arrested by the Secret Service. He did hit a Secret Service agent who had a bulletproof vest on, who's fine. But everyone was evacuated immediately and unharmed. Unfortunately, this guy's from California, and I always hate when I hear when someone does something bad from California. I'm like, come on, Californians.
From California.
Yeah. But he's being charged with the attempted assassination of the president and some other federal crimes. So he's acted alone. His motive is still under investigation. There was a manifesto. We'll get into that shortly. But, what was really interesting was as soon as this happened, all of a sudden there was, media just went off, right, in different directions. And some said that he was killed, right? This guy was shot dead. That wasn't the case later when a photo of him was tweeted out by Trump. But what happened was there was tons of conspiracy theories that hit the media. Many people were talking about this was the first time Trump decided to even attend the dinner in many years, right? Like, why did it happen on this one? There was no security getting through. Many MAGA, I would say influencers talked about this. Like, all you had to do was show a ticket. Like, it was very easy to get in. None of the Trump children were there, which I think is an interesting tidbit of information here.
Interesting.
And then, and the main issue here is no one's really believing what's coming out of the media or from the president today. And the story really isn't just about what happened. It's how fast people decided on what to believe. And I feel like I really fell into this bucket as well. Like, within minutes, you had headlines, hot takes, and conspiracy threads all like competing at once. And I felt like it wasn't really because people care about the truth anymore. It was because we don't all trust the same news sources and how they deliver it. So, like, every major event now splits in, like 2 timelines. One based on verified facts, and then the other was based on how what people feel is true. And then once you pick that lane, it's hard to come back, right? Like, even if you're in the Instagram algorithm, all of a sudden you're seeing the same thing on that one story that you sat on. And the real shift in media today isn't just speed, it's just fragmentation, right? We're not arguing over opinions anymore. We're arguing over reality itself. And I think that's the scary thing here is once I've, read this manifesto that did come out from the White House, but who else would it come out from? I was like, wow, this really was real. It maybe wasn't staged by the president. So
I saw a really interesting quote in this article from a guy named Jeff Dancy, who's a political scientist at the University of Toronto. And he said, people who seek out conspiracies are often looking for comfort or order among disorder. It could be a comforting thought to think this is all planned. It sort of allays your fears to think this wasn't just some person who had access to weapons and snapped, because that's scary. And I thought that was so interesting. Like, I think that often there's this obvious, I think rightful kind of looking down on conspiracy theorists because they are, inherently trying to seize on people's fears and maybe spread disinformation. But I think there's a really interesting component emotionally of like, we are in a time that feels so chaotic and so uncertain. And so the idea that this could actually keep happening, that like people could keep trying to assassinate the president, whether you agree with him or not, just the fact that that keeps happening and not to mention on the other side of that, the proliferation of guns in our country, which even however you feel about that is like an obvious fact. And so it's a kind of an interesting thing to me of, yes, people are diving to conspiracy theories, I think, in a malicious way if you're trying to gain followers from it or gain attention from it. But also I think for a lot of people, it's not malicious. It's almost like this explanation for how difficult it is to comprehend some of the behavior and division that we all feel on a regular basis right now.
I think that's so true. And, I think that this speaks to how much distrust people have right now. They distrust in the administration and what law enforcement is saying and doing, distrust in obviously journalism and reporting and news sources. I think it was so interesting to see. I want to get back to your larger point, Anna, because I think it's a good
Mhm.
one. But just going back into the ballroom for a moment, this was a really interesting event, a series of events in that these journalists and reporters cover these school shootings. They cover these mass shootings and tragedies that happen. And this one, obviously, thankfully, wasn't tragic. Nobody died,
Mhm.
but they were on the inside for it. And I thought it was so interesting and and really like hard for me to make sense of the idea that they then all kind of sprung into action in terms of covering the event that they were the potential victims of.
I was
Wh-
out when all this happened, and Billy
Yeah.
was at home and he texted me. He was like, all the reporters on TV are in tuxedos right now.
Yeah.
And it's just like a
Yeah, it's
wild,
a surreal
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And but going back to what you were saying, I think that this speaks to how divided and how untrustworthy we are as a nation right now, because these conspiracy theories are emerging from the MAGA side of things. There's a real vocal chorus of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Tucker Carlson, like others
Hmm.
who are really fomenting serious conspiracy theory questioning and distrust, particularly around the Butler assassination attempt. And, obviously quick to jump on this. But you're also then seeing it from the left. And I feel like one of the driving elements to this is we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge some of the wild, unexplained theatrics of
Hmm.
everything here, and
Mhm.
I think that like the Trump presidency has and Trump in general, his whole life has been so defined by theatrics that when we've sort of become numb to so much that these theatrics that maybe are coincidental or maybe intended, like it almost is like too much to believe.
Yeah.
Also, sorry, Anna, to
Mhm.
butt in there, but like Michael, you make a good point. And who started these theatrics and elevated these conspiracy voices? It was Donald Trump.
Mhm.
Right.
And I was thinking about it recently. I was like, now we really like those voices are so elevated now and have such followings that they reach the common person
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And before, it always used to be the kooky aunt who would talk about these theories. And now, like, I was at a dinner party last night. Everyone thought this was staged. And
Wow.
this was from like my age to our parents' age. And
Yeah.
these people weren't even like, they're Republicans, not Trump Republicans.
Mhm.
And they're like, they felt it was staged. And I'm like, man, I think that's the issue of where we've allowed these Candace Owens and Tucker Carlsons
Mhm.
and Marjorie Taylor Greenes to, bring all these ideas to light. And now we go, are we not supposed to
Right.
believe some part of it.
Well, and what I was going to say is I think, like, to my point before about sort of us trying to place the craziness of it all, when you see a conspiracy theory like that elevated, and then, you know, the thing that really caught me was that picture of all the people in the administration in the press conference room, and they're all like smiling.
Smiling.
And
in
like
tuxedos, right?
there's a million explanations of why that one specific picture might have been taken, right? Like
Mhm.
there's endless circumstances in which people in a time of duress would be smiling if someone cracked a, you know, whatever this thing happened. But if you couple that with, oh, there's a lot of distrust of that this actually happened, there's a lot of questioning around, you know, if this was staged or whatever, and then you also add in that picture, suddenly you start to create the body of evidence for this. And I think it's so true that, like, that level of disinformation in the world that we live in, with fake images, but also with real images like that can tell a certain story, that it's possible to create any body of evidence around any claim if there's enough people pushing that claim that it kind of like infiltrates your thinking, as opposed to the Reagan assassination attempt, or, you know, those kinds of things that even the JFK assassination attempt, which obviously now there's a lot of conspiracy theories around, but in the moment, everyone kind of
Mhm.
understood that, you know, was a very real thing that happened, and united behind condemning it. That those days are gone of kind of that national agreed upon explanation for something.
But like, what world are we living in? I mean, there have been like 4 assassinations on Trump. I mean, he's the most important person in the United States. And, you know, when that whole Butler thing happened, I'm like, how is our Secret Service not on every rooftop? There weren't
Yeah.
that many buildings there. You know, even with something like this, in the manifesto, the guy talks about, he goes, what if Iran had sent someone, you know, who actually had a bomb for the whole hotel? Like,
Right.
Mhm.
really. And to me, like, that's the scary thing. You know,
Right.
Michael, you're joking about sitting next to him. I'm like, I don't
even
want to
wanna
be
in the same
even
room.
you want to be even the same vicinity as Trump.
I
Like, if he's
agree.
driving by, I'm like,
Yeah.
pray God, please don't let anything happen right
Yeah.
now.
Well, I was
So,
looking into what some of the young people in Congress were saying about this, because I think that there's been a lot of smatterings of, like, specifically on the right, obviously blaming Democrats for it all. On the left, a sort of like general call for the end of political violence. And specifically, Josh Hawley now is introducing, or like, you know, calling on investigations into these assassinations, and why there is some sort of security breakdown that seems to be happening. And so I think that's a pretty important voice on the right that's maybe questioning
Hmm.
the security element of this. There was also, you know, Nicole Maliotakis tweeted about this, that
from New
York, about, you know, that this is all related to the lack of funding for the Department of Homeland Security, of which you know,
Interesting.
it's all related. But then we have to take a step back and realize that Homeland Security is already funded to the extent of $75 billion because of the big beautiful bill at the end of last year. So like, this extra funding isn't necessarily a
Right.
part of why there would be any security breakdown, but it's a good talking point.
Right. Scott Jennings was using that over the weekend.
Totally. And
Yeah.
then just to continue with some Republicans, Lance Gooden from Texas, he said the White House Correspondents Dinner shooting subject, then they wrote a list: admitted to targeting Trump officials, attended a No Kings protest, donated to Act Blue, which I don't know why the donated to Act Blue made me laugh, but and yet Barack Obama claims the motive is unclear. If that's not shameful, I don't know what is. So like, immediately attacking Obama, who did come out and said,
Yeah.
like, we don't know the motive yet, when, you know, they're saying that we kind of did. But then there was, you know, like, on the other side of this, most Democrats were saying end of political violence. Morgan McGarvey said that. AOC very notably said that. Like, I think she was one of the first people the following morning to tweet out kind of a very standard, like, end of political violence. Darren Soto said that from from Florida. We had two Republicans I found, Jeff Hurd from Colorado, Brian Jack from Georgia. Both had very straightforward statements about political violence. But the one that I wanted to focus on is that Jared Moskowitz posted a photo of like a new, like a screenshot of something on the news. And he said, Jared Moskowitz is a Democrat from Florida, known for being a very bipartisan member of Congress, despite, I would say, not being a particularly moderate Democrat. Like, I think he's just someone who converses well with the other side.
And I think very outspoken. He's been
very
very
outspoken,
yeah,
but very amenable with Republicans, I think, on like a personal level. And so it's this photo where he and other people are being led by security. And he says, "Here is Steve Scalise taking me with him." So Steve Scalise, very prominent Republican member of Congress who survived an assassination attempt several years ago. "Here is Steve Scalise taking me with him. Again, I am thankful to him and to law enforcement. Just two people who previously had assassination attempts against them. Steve's more serious. It's been 8 years since the shooting in Parkland at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, which was Jared Moskowitz High School." And I just found that to be, to me, the most important commentary that I saw about all of this from a politician. Because even January 6th became politicized. There was very little recognition from people on either side of the aisle that they were helping each other, which we know from photos they were.
Right, that they were.
And
we know that they were terrified.
Yes. And Steve Scalise responded to this and said, "Jared, so glad we made it out safe last night. Times like these are when good people all need to stick together. It's not about one party versus another. It's about good prevailing over evil. Prayer hands." And I don't know, like that, it got me because I was like, despite all the conspiracy theories, despite the fact that Democrats are really trying to like stay uniting this message against violence, despite the fact that the majority of Republicans are really going after Democrats as to blame for this, I just thought that was so notable. It's like we should be calling out the fact that beneath the fighting and the division, a lot of these people in Congress know each other and want to help each other. And that humanization, I just think, is a really important element of this when something catastrophic happens, whether or not it's staged, right? Like the fear of these people was still real. And I think that was what Jared and Steve are alluding to there.
One of the people I was at a dinner with on Saturday, fresh after this happened, is a Republican, a never Trumper Republican, but certainly not a Democrat supporter. And, they were saying, they were like, look, we have a president who is one of the most divisive presidents we've ever seen in this country. We have an administration with cabinet members who are the most divisive cabinet members we've ever seen. And we have a country that has really rampant gun freedoms. And we are in a society that is getting more divided and more isolated and frankly angrier at the state of life. And they were saying, and I, agree or disagree, they certainly weren't condoning this, but they were like, what about this is surprising? They were like, it's surprising that this is only the fourth attempt. Like, and that, I thought that was so interesting because it kind of goes back to this like perpetuating machine. And in a way, it's what social media was intended to do, which is, that spreading like wildfire, this sentiment of division, sentiment of distrust, and all of that. I think seeing the emergence of conspiracy theories is the result of that. That's the kind of reaction to it. But what I'm wondering, just going back to Anna, what you were saying about Jared Moskowitz and Steve Scalise, I think that is so great. And
I think it's the antidote. Like, I think
why,
that, yeah.
And so my question though is like, when we look at so many Democrats and so many Republicans in media have come out and sort of condemned political violence, and yet we see this rhetoric from a White House that just 2 weeks ago was talking about annihilating an entire civilization,
Mm-hmm.
and then goes on to blame Democrats for inciting violence. Like, to me, that is the scariest thing that I am taking away from this, is that disconnect.
I think that what I would hope in a situation, and as this administration continues to unfold, is that we understand that we will never get that from Trump. Whether you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're a moderate, I think, or you're one of the majority of Americans who just wants shit to get done and doesn't really care about any of the rhetoric at all. I think that there's no point in creating that expectation, because that's not why Trump got elected. He got elected for his personality, and that is not what he has shown us to be the truth of who he is and the truth of who he surrounds himself with. And so once we can just accept that, I think then if we can look to other people like Representatives Moskowitz and Scalise, for example, or like the many Republicans and Democrats who are just calling for an end to political violence and not trying to create more division from this, I think we can begin to understand that there's an element of, if not cooperation, then at least understanding and humanity between the majority of people who we elect into these positions. And I think that is the fact that has been completely forgotten, is that we have been conditioned, rightly so, as a general public to feel that all politicians are power hungry, all politicians are corrupt, all politicians care about is sowing division so that they can make money, gain power, and win elections. And for whatever naivete it's worth, like, I think that that is not always true. I think it's sometimes true, but I think that in that event, that in the event of something like this that is genuinely scary, to see two people who definitely disagree on most issues have a public exchange of gratitude for each other, you know, it's kind of sappy, but I think that that's like the thing that is the antidote to exactly what your friend was saying. And I don't know a way to get more of it other than just to like, it's the algorithm of it. Like, that is the thing that we should be enforcing, not the other thing. And it's kind of up to us as people to remind ourselves that we should be reinforcing that.
Yeah. And I think one of the issues here too was, again, once another perfect opportunity come together, but then, and what I think fueled these conspiracy theories was Trump then talking about the White House ballroom.
Right.
And like, out of all the things you're going to discuss, it's now, I was like, is this guy just not the most insane marketer?
Well,
ever?
that was the other conspiracy theory, was like, oh, this was all so that he could have an excuse for the ballroom.
Right. Yeah. And clearly there's a group chat,
and it made it
of
feel
all of these right-wing MAGA folks, because when you look at minutes after this shooting attempt, all of these influencers, MAGA, right-wing personalities all came out and had the talking points. And the reporting is that they're all on a text thread, and that ballroom talking point was sent out by somebody in the White House.
So my only thing about this is the fact that that is like a weapon of the left right now, I think is a little bit ridiculous, because both parties have email groups, group chats, chains of, you know, telephone to people of creators, influencers, important people within the party that are messaging reports. And so I think the fact that like someone on the Trump team was like ballroom and sent that out, I don't think, to me, that's the work of a communications person within the administration, is to seize on the opportunity. If people want to go as far to say that shows that it was like a conspiracy theory for it, but I don't think it's a particularly negative thing of like, all these influencers then went on and said something about the ballroom. It's like Democrats would have done the same thing if there was something that aligned with their agenda out of a tragedy and all the influencers went on and said it. Like that's
perhaps. But I think the point, the thing about that bothers me, and maybe folks on television right now aren't clarifying this point enough. In these moments, in these sort of events, obviously this thankfully was not a tragic event. Nobody lost their life. It was very scary. It was terrible. But we have this saying where everybody comes out and says, don't politicize this. This is don't politicize it. And it oftentimes, right, if it's a Democrat in charge, they say don't politicize it against any right-wing talking points. And if a Republican's in charge, they say don't politicize it, against left-wing talking points. And so by a White House disseminating that kind of messaging is division. Division, and it's instantly politicizing an event. And I think that is where the sort of cravenness of the Trump administration that has really fired people up comes from. It's that sort of thing that I think is as disingenuous as you can be in a time that really is scary, and we need to come together. We need to find a way to heal as a country and repair these divisions. I think it's going to take many more administrations following this one to do it. But
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree. Well,
can we, before we end, just sort of like also call out some of the weirdness that was going on at this sort of?
I thought the weirdest one was like Stephen Miller grabbing his wife's boob from behind.
Everyone was
had to take the opportunity.
Well, people were like, he's using her as a human shield, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if I buy that, but like the fact that he just was holding on to her breast, like, dude, just move your hand a little bit lower. Like, I know
accidental boob
how about RFK?
But
how about RFK Jr. just totally ditching
Cheryl Hines?
That was my favorite. Was that happening? I'm like, there are so many Kennedys out there, but there's one Cheryl Hines. And you left. I was like, you see how people act during moments, and I was like,
it's really amazing.
You don't protect your wife.
How about the guy who was just chilling, eating his burrata salad?
I think he was an agent. I think it was or agent or a producer. Yeah, that came out. He's
like, hey guys, this is great television, and let me tell you about this burrata.
He gave an interview. He said he has a bad back. And he's a germaphobe, so he's like, there was no way I was getting on the floor.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wait, really?
And he's like, I'm also from, I think he said he's from New York or something. He's like, I wasn't scared.
I'm not afraid of guns.
Yeah. Well, and you know who wasn't afraid was Mr. Dana White, who had a shit-eating grin on his face the entire time. And then leaving the ballroom, he said, this was so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he actually looked like he was having a great time.
Yeah, he did. He's like, this was so awesome. This was so freaking cool.
Well, he I think would jump in. I think if the shooter actually came in, I would kind of want Dana White in the room.
This is what I think would have happened. I think that he would have hid behind a table like a pussy, and then as soon as the actual security took the guy down, Dana White would have jumped into the picture and like put his hands on the guy back for the photo op.
Yeah. There's also like some videos of as Hegseth is exiting. He's got what the kids call cocaine. Cocaine jaw. Where he's like has a jaw twitch, which
it was allegedly supposed to be a good night. I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
Yeah, he was off duty. So it's very interesting to see all of the different elements here at play. And again, I think we're able to sort of chuckle a little bit at some of these oddities, given that this wasn't a tragic event. But obviously it remains
it's still a serious thing that happened.
Yeah, and remains an escalating thing in our culture and country right now, and I don't know what the answer is. I think it's more Moskowitz. I think it's more Moskowitz than Scalise.
Over me.
2028 ticket, Moskowitz and Scalise.
I don't know about that.
I don't think
Unity
that's going to
ticket.
happen, kids. It's
No.
not.
All right. Cheers,
All right,
guys.
Cool.
Cheers.
All right. Cheers.